Hello and welcome to today's webinar reviewing dotCMS 5.0. My name's Alex Sterling and I'm joined by Tom Kisha. We both work for Ethode, a company out of Northeast Ohio, primarily a web development firm. So who are we? Let's get into that. We're a rare breed of friendly geeks. We know code from scalable CMS, e-commerce, API integrations to mobile apps. We also deliver digital innovation, apply design-first thinking, and help launch entrepreneurial startups. We've been using dotCMS as our preferred CMS platform since 2011, and from large multi-tenant sites to smaller mom-and-pop sites, we put all of them into dotCMS. We do a lot of things other than dotCMS, but dotCMS being our preferred CMS platform, we do a lot of work in it. Our experience with dotCMS ranges from doing upgrades from the first version to the second version to the third version to the fourth version, and soon we'll be starting our first upgrades into the fifth version and developing sites for the first time into the fifth version. We've had clients like the University of Akron, World at Work, Will to Love, EJCO, SVN Commercial Real Estate, and more. Those are mostly big clients. We also put small clients in, multi-tenant clients, that sort of thing. We've done a lot of OSGI and static plugin development. We've done everything from Spring plugins to overriding base behavior of dotCMS to integrating with APIs, just being a pass-through to web services, all sorts of things. Also created, and this is what Tom Kisha has done, he's created dotCMS utility tool creation, primarily using JSP and REST, the REST API that comes with dotCMS, in order to sort of expand the base tools that dotCMS offers. We've also done tons of extensive template architecture and design implementation. Tom Kisha is really a master of template architecture, and I like trying to nail designs created by our designers, other design firms in dotCMS. So without further ado, let's get on with the primary chunk of the webinar, reviewing dotCMS 5.0's new features. Let's take a look at some of the new exciting features that we like. These features are lowering the barrier to entry so that content creators with less training can create page layouts, put together powerful workflow schemes, and create new content types easier than ever. As developers, we're excited about some changes to containers, a new reporting module project managers and marketing folks will love, as well as a big update to Elasticsearch. Let's start by diving into the new drag and drop page and layout feature. The drag and drop page layout editor is a great way to quickly rearrange content on a page. Let's take a look at how we can do this. And for example, let's look at blogs. So on the demo site, there's a blog section that we can take a look at here. Here we've got a large chunk of content on the left-hand side. You can see it takes up most of the horizontal width of the page. And then we also have a menu over here on the right. So this takes up about 8/12 of the page, or 2/3. And on this side, it takes 4/12, or 1/3. We can change how we're sorting the content here. There's some stuff we can look at most recent, but the most important thing is just this general layout. So we've got a large chunk over here and a small chunk over here. The rest of the page is we have a header at the top, and then down at the bottom a large footer. Let's take a look at how this is represented in dotCMS. So in dotCMS, let's go to the site browser here. Let's go to blogs. Let's check out the index page that's rendering this. Okay, so in the preview, we can see exactly what we saw before. In the edit view, we can see we have a container over here on the left, a smaller container over here on the right, the header above, and the footer below. Now let's see how this looks in the new layout view. In the new layout view, we can see exactly this, but kind of blocked out. So we see the header, the footer, and then this one row of content with a column on the left and a column on the right. Now, if we wanted to, we could shrink down the blog, slide over the menu, and then make it large again. Save this, new layout, save the content, save and publish. Then we'll go check out the blog. Let's refresh. We'll see that we've rearranged the blog here. Now we have a giant menu on the right and a tiny blog on the left. This is just a quick demo of how we can change things around. Let's go back in and let's put the menu on the other side of the page. Let's see just how quickly we can make that happen here. So we're going to drag that over there. We're going to take our large column, drag it over, and make it the full width of the page. So now we should have a menu on the left and our blogs on the right. Let's just save and publish this. You can already see we have that in the preview here. Let's take another look in a fully live view. And there we are. We've just changed the whole look and feel of the blog. Well, not the whole look and feel, but the general idea here. Maybe some users were reporting that they didn't like having the menu on the right, so we can put it on the left. It's just that easy. Let's see what else we can do with changing the layout here. You might have seen as I was dragging things around in here that you can create new rows just by dragging content down or up into a new area. So let's do exactly that. Let's drag these actually right next to each other, but then let's add a whole new container and let's drag it above these. Okay, let's make it take up the whole page and let's put a banner in there. Let's save this. Go back to the content view. Go to edit, and let's put something in there. There should be some banners included with the dotCMS demo. Let's just pick this global trading banner here, and we'll save and publish the page. So now let's go take another look at the blog, and now we have basically a full-size hero banner up here at the top of the page. And then down below we have our blog. Now remember, I've done all of this just with pointing and clicking. I've also been able to rearrange the size of things on the page just with pointing and clicking and dragging. So you can see how this is friendly enough to use with minimally trained content editors. Let's see how this is actually being accomplished. So let's take a look at the HTML real quick. Let me click on this blog. We'll inspect the element. We'll blow this up a little bit. And we'll take a look at what's going on here. So we have our row wrapper here, which is something you might be used to if you're used to looking at the HTML that dotCMS creates. We also have this row, which represents this entire row, and we have this call-md-4. If you've used Bootstrap before, you'll recognize this as part of their grid layout system. It's saying on devices size breakpoint MD and larger, I think MD is 768 pixels, we can see over here, or larger. We want this column here to take up 4 of the 12 available widths. So in Bootstrap and in Foundation, their grids are based on a 12 grid system, a 12 vertical or 12 horizontal width division system. So the whole thing is 12 wide, and then you can, any division of 12 in there, you can create columns and put content in those. So 4 would just be 1/3 and 8 would be 2/3 of the entire width. We could change these to be even. So we can go back into our layout here. We can drag this down too so it's become 6. Drag this out so it's become 6. Save it. Save and publish. Refresh the page. And of course, you'll see up here in the actual content it's changed. And most importantly, here in the HTML markup it has changed. So now it says call MD6. The CSS that powers this page is going to give it a width of 50%, and that gets reflected on the page in the actual rendering. Let's see how it's actually handling this in the template.btl. So this is all based on, if we take a look in here, properties. Or actually, no, it's because it's right here, sorry, at the top of this. Somewhere up here. Oh, I'm not in the layout tab. Layout, in the layout tab, it tells us what theme we're using here. Now we could switch to the internet or ski resort theme, but I'm going to stay in the Quest theme because I already know where all these files are. So we're going to go into application, themes, Quest. And we're just going to take a look at template.btl. This is the default velocity file for handling the dynamic layouts for this theme. So we're going to look at this. We got some boilerplate header material here. It's going to pull in another VTL file to do all the stuff in the head. And then it's also going to pull in another file to do the header. And then down below, we have something that's going to handle all the rows in what it calls the main column. These are the rows that we were messing with where we added the banner and we were playing with the widths in the layout editor. So it checks to make sure there are some rows, and then it iterates through each row, and then through each row it iterates through each column. So in each column, it's going to check first off if it has a left offset and then the actual column's width. So this is important because if you notice in the editor here, let me pull up another editor here. Let's go to blogs, into the layout editor here. So on these, you'll notice hiding back behind, let's just get rid of this banner for now. Hiding back behind here, you can see these little gray bars, and if I shrink one of these down, we can see it very easily. So these gray bars represent one of the 12 column widths that we have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 through 12 on the right there. If we slide one of these around, we'll notice that we can offset them, and the offset always exists on the left side of a container. So when we had these both at half the width of the entire page, these are both set to a width of 6. So this column's dot width property is going to be 6. Now if we shrink this down by 1 and move it over to the right so that there is an offset of 1 on the left, it's going to have a dot left offset property of 1. If we shrink it down again and move it over, now it'll have a dot left offset property of 2. Let's save this and actually see how it looks on the page real quick. We go to edit, go to save and publish. And down here we'll see that the blog stayed in the same spot. The menu became a little bit smaller, and now we have this offset over here on the left. Let's see how this looks in the HTML here. Let me dig down to where we are. Okay, so now we see we have our call MD6 on the right like we had before, but now we have a call MD4 because it was taking up 4 of these vertical columns here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then also it has 2 of these left offsets. So that gets added as a second class on the element called offset-sm-2. And so that's how we're working with Bootstrap to create these layouts. You'll see it's calculating the left offset. First it checks to see if it's even set or it's set to something greater than 0. Otherwise it won't bother with a class. It'll generate an empty string for the class. Otherwise it creates a class based on the offset value, the column.left offset value. And then what it does with that offset value is just adds it to the end of the dash. So in this case it's a 2, and it ends up rendered in here in the HTML as offset-sm-2. Same thing goes for the columns here. We'll see the columns up here, they get rendered as either as with the column width, so 0 or 1 through 12 up here. So in the case of this one right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and in the case of over here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can see that represented here in the HTML, and that's what these widths are rendering into the HTML here, these classes. And that's basically how it's empowered. Further into here, it'll actually draw out the actual content itself. But that's how we're doing this automatic layout stuff. It's just modifying Bootstrap classes. We can adapt this to work with Foundation pretty easily, and also allows for this offset type behavior too. So maybe you wanted some breathing room in between your blog and the menu over there. We can make the menus still be 4 wide, but then we'll make the blog only 7 wide with a left offset of 1. We'll save that. Save and publish our content here. We'll take another look. And now we have a gap in between there. And it's that easy to push the content around. That's the basics of the new page layout editor. It's pretty powerful, and it also gives you lots of control over the look and feel of the page. As long as the site is set up to work with these sorts of columns, it doesn't need to be set up with Bootstrap, though it does work out of the box that way. It's easy enough to adapt to something like Foundation. And if you have your own layout system, perhaps using Flexbox and not absolute widths, but percentage widths, you'd be able to adapt the system to work with that as well, and still use the drag and drop and drag to resize functionality here in the page layout editor. Okay, let's start into drag and drop workflows. Let's go take a look here in the types and tags menu, go to workflows. So here we have a couple of workflow schemes. You can start a new workflow scheme with this button. And let's do that real quick. Let's just start making up a workflow out of nowhere. Let's call it basic reviewing. Oh boy. All right. Click save. All right, so now we have a new empty workflow. So let's start setting this up. We're going to set this up so that we have contributors, we have reviewers, and publishers. It's going to go through each of those roles. Contributors are going to create the brand new items. Reviewers are going to review those once they're happy, once the contributors are happy with their content. And then the publishers are going to hit the final publish button, and they have complete control over whether or not content becomes public. So let's add a workflow step here by clicking on this Add Workflow Step button. Let's call this Editing. And another one right now just called Reviewing. And then the last one called Publishing. We're going to add a couple more, but these are the main ones for this workflow here. You can go back in here. You can choose whether or not this is mandatory or if it has to be on a schedule. We're just going to leave it as is currently. We're going to go in here and add a new action. We're going to call this one, call it Save as Draft, because first thing you do after you create some new content is probably save as draft. Let's make sure that contributors can do this. Contributor. Let's also let the two roles above them do it as well. Publisher. Okey-doke. Let's make sure you can do this in all steps. We don't really care about doing it in archived, but let's let them do it in all these steps. We'll also let them do it from, let's not let them do it from the listing menu, but from editing means when you click in and you're actually editing the piece of content. Listing means when you're in the content search and you have the whole list of all the content. Locked and unlocked, either those two states, brand new, published, unpublished, or all. Those are I mean, not all, but those are the other states. Archive doesn't matter because it's already archived. Saving it is, they're not going to be able to even see it in the listing. And let's make sure it assigns back to the current user, as you're just saving it for yourself. And let's not bother notifying the assignee here. Let's look at some of the other actions that you could do, though. You could make it do copy the contentlet, and we would change this as save as copy or something like that. You can make it lock the content or unlock the content afterwards. You can make it push publish to another server. You can make it require multiple approvers. You could change a value in the contentlet, so you could increment something, or you could set something to the current date, something like that. You could unpublish the content. You can publish a Twitter status if you have your Twitter account API information, like the consumer key, secret, access token, that sort of stuff. All of these steps are configurable too, except for some like lock content, because all it does is lock the content. But the ones where it says it sends an email or it changes a value, that sort of thing, you're able to modify what happens in those sub actions. So I think we're happy with this as it is. Let's save it. Let's go back into here. And we also want whoever's reviewing to be able to do this, and whoever is publishing to be able to do this. See how we can just click and drag in there? And also, since these steps are identical, when I hover over them, they will all highlight at the same time. It's easy to see that all these people have these abilities. So let's add one more step to editing here. We're going to want to send to review. Next step is going to be reviewing. Who can use it? We're going to say contributors. First of all, contributors. Wait, I can't type today. Contributors, reviewers, publishers. Okay. And we're going to allow them to do that anytime except when it's archived. We'll even let them do it from the listing, because maybe they just saved it and then they realize, okay, I'm gonna send this and maybe a couple other things to review. Then they can do it from the listing. Let's allow comments, and let's send it to the reviewer role. So this will show up for all reviewers in their tasks once this gets assigned, once this gets pushed to the next step. Let's notify the assignee here. And I don't think we need to do anything else to the content here, so let's just save this step. And let's back out of here. So now notice we have send to review, and then it has a little arrow pointing to reviewing, meaning it'll get sent into this step. So when the content is brand new, you'll be able to do all of these things. Once it's in the reviewing step, it'll be in here, and these options won't be available. Send to review will no longer be available. We'll just have save as draft. So we want a couple other things here. Let's add send to publisher. And let's send it to publishing step here. And we're going to say just the reviewers and publishers can do this step. We're also going to say that they can do this in the listing, everything but archived. We're going to allow comments, and we're going to send it to the publisher role. Okie doke. And we're still going to notify the assignee, and we're not going to do anything else to the content. We're just going to pipe it through this simple workflow. So once it gets, see, we have a save to publisher. Actually, I'm going to send this to the bottom here, send to publisher. So this one will get pushed into this step. Now let's have the publish action here. Let's call it save and publish. It's going to stay in the current step. Actually, we're going to send it to a new step here, but we're going to create that step in just a moment. We're going to, actually, maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll just leave. Once content is published, we will allow the publisher, and only the publisher, to demote the content down back into either review or edit. So we're only going to allow the publisher to complete this step. We're going to allow them to do it in all of these states except for archive. We'll make them unarchive to get it out of there. We'll allow comments, and we'll assign it to current user. Actually, I should have left it just how it is. Current user, because it's not going to get pushed to another step. It's going to stay assigned to the same person. And what we're going to do here is we're going to pick, let's pick save and publish. Publish. And let's get rid of notify assignee. Okie doke. And let's save this step. Let's see what we've got now. So when content's brand new, it'll be in this editing step. It'll start in the earliest step here. They will have the ability to save as draft or send to review. Then it'll go into the reviewing step, in which it'll have the ability to save as draft and then send to publisher. Then it'll get sent into the publishing step, which will be able to be save as draft, and then one other option, save and publish. Now that's all that will be able to be done. So if we want people to be able to archive or unpublish this, we're going to need to fit those into some role. So let's add that into the publisher's role here. We call it unpublish. We get assigned to the current step. We're going to call this one, we're going to send this one only for publishers. So they're the only ones who are allowed to do this. Okay. For some reason my type ahead isn't behaving. There we go. Let's hit the all button here. Everything, actually we don't want it to be all, do we? We want it to only be for published content, but locked and unlocked and in editing and listing. So we're also going to allow comments because maybe we want to say something like notice a typo or content has become obsolete, something like that. We don't want to bother assigning or notifying the assignee because they are the assignee, but we want to unpublish this content. So let's unpublish it. Let's save, and let's go back here. So now we have unpublish in here. Maybe we also want this person to be able to archive this content. So let's do archive. Let's send it to the current step. Let's make sure that both publishers, and let's also make it so reviewers, in case a reviewer catches something, they can archive the content as well. Let's just do this for everything but archived content here. Maybe not new content. And we'll leave it assigned to the current user here. And we won't bother notifying the assignee, but we will archive this content. Archive. So the reason that I want the reviewer to be able to archive this content is maybe they were reviewing something that a content contributor created, but it was really bad, so they just want to get rid of it. This will allow them to get rid of it. Okay. And let's drag this into the reviewing step. So now they are allowed to archive their content in both of these steps. Okay, let's think if there's anything else we should have in here. So currently, as an editor, you can push it up to reviewing. As a reviewer, you can push it up into publishing. And as a publisher, you can commit all these actions, but you can't back it down to review, and you can't back it down into editing. So why don't we create a couple of steps for doing that real quick? So let's see if we can just reuse send to review. Publisher can do this. Next step will be back down to reviewing. That sounds good. Let's do that. Let's just put this one on here so we can send it back down to review. And let's create a new one to send it down for editing. So let's call it return for editing. Send it to editing. We'll make sure reviewers can complete this action and publishers. Okay. It's for everything except for archive content. And allow them to comment. Let's set it to reviewer. And we'll notify the assignee. That sounds good. All right, let's save here. Let's return back. So now we can send to review, which will send it back down to this step. And we can return for editing, which will set it back down to this step. All right. So now we have a way for each step and each role to pass the content back and forth to each other. Let's try and think if there's anything else we would want to do. So we have published content sitting out there. We're able to unpublish and archive it. Let's think about this a little harder. Let's put ourselves in each role, actually. So with this filter who can use thing, we can go to contributor, and then we can see what steps everybody can do in all of these, in each of these steps here. So as a contributor, I have actions in editing, reviewing, and publishing. We might actually want it to work that way because that means when it's in the publisher's hands, the editor could step in and save the content as a draft without them knowing, or even send it to review, send it back down a step without the publisher having anything to do with it. So maybe we should separate these two. Let's remove this one out of here. Let's add one called return to reviewer. We'll set it to reviewing. We'll say only the publisher can do this. We'll start to separate things out a little bit more. And we'll make sure they can do it in all these steps here, but we'll send it to the reviewer. Publisher will notify the assignee. That sounds good. All right, let's go back. We have a set to all now. So now we have one less thing that the contributor can do up at that level. Also see here, we still have save as draft. Maybe we want to separate that out. Maybe we don't. Maybe we want the editor to be able to continuously save this draft, and then eventually that can get incorporated into the reviews. But now the editor cannot take something out of the publishing step and send it back into reviewing. I like that idea. Let's check out what the reviewers can do. Okay. So the reviewers can act as an editor. That makes sense. But they can also archive from the publishing step. So maybe what we want, so that means that they could unpublish something, essentially. They could unpublish and then archive it all in one fell swoop. So maybe what we should do is we should separate this one out and give only publishers this ability. So let's publisher the ability here. Make it everything but archived, and we'll keep it assigned to the current user. It'll stay in this step. Okay, and actually we don't need to notify the assignee. We'll save this step. Okay, so now let's step into the reviewer role here. Okay, now the reviewer can't do anything except save this draft in the publishing step. So that's good. They can't archive something that's already out there. The publisher can, though. Let's check out what the publisher can do. So publishing. Legal. So now the publisher, they're able to archive it from this step. They're able to return it to the reviewer. They're able to just unpublish it, save and publish, save as draft, and all the other steps below them. I think this looks like a pretty complete workflow now. So when something's brand new, they're able to save as a draft. If they're happy with what they did, they can send it up to reviewing. These guys can save as draft. They can return it for editing back to the editors, or they can just archive it because they don't like it at all. Or they can push it up the chain to publishing and send a publisher. And these guys could either save and publish, save as draft, continue editing on their own, unpublish or archive it because they don't like this, or return to reviewer for perhaps more edits or to pass it back down all the way to editing. Maybe they should also be able to, oops, maybe they should also be able to, okay, let's see if I can get my click and drag working here. I clicked on too many things on this page. Here we go. Return for editing. Let's put it right above return to reviewer. So now we know, now they're able to push it down all the way to editing as well. Let's make sure that they're able to complete this action. Yep, they are. Perfect. Okay, so this looks like a pretty good workflow. And all we did was point and click to get things going. Some of the most useful things here are stepping into the roles. So when we look at things as a contributor here, contributors will only be able to complete these actions, reviewers will only be able to complete these actions, that kind of thing. Also, these sub-actions. So when we return to editing here or something like that, we could also maybe return for editing. We want to unpublish it at the same time. We could do that. Let's look at some of these other ones. There's a 4 eyes approval one. This one's pretty interesting. So you could add user IDs, emails, or role keys, and it would require, so say we had a role key, I'm pretty sure we do, of contributor, or actually we want it to be publisher. How about that? So we'll have publisher in here, and it says number of approvers 2. We can make this 4, we can make it 2, we can make it 1, but that's not very useful. But so say we made it 2, what this would do is it would require them, 2 publishers, to approve this in their tasks menu here. So it would show up there, it would show that they have a task of approval, and not until 2 publishers approved it would this be able to be published, which is pretty interesting. Be able to also send an email to notify them of these things, and you can actually put velocity in here. You can put something like content.body, so you can say like, please approve the following content, and then have the content.body there. Blog article requires approval, and then content.title, something like that. Save that, and it'll create, this must not be a correct role key right here. So I'd have to, it's actually publisher legal. Maybe I can just put it in reviewer here. I'd have to go look up the role key. I don't know a role key. Let's put in an email address. There we go. So as long as you have a valid thing here, and you can put as many of these as you want. I'm not sure what Joe contributors. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now that we have these 2 in here, and it has number of approvers too, we would need both of these users to log in and approve this content. And also, when it goes to send out these emails to notify them, it'll use these 2 emails as well. I'll actually use these 2 users to look up their email, but we're identifying the users using these emails. If you use a role key, something like reviewer, except I'm not sure exactly what the role key is apparently, what will happen is it will send an email to all reviewers with this formatting right here. So that wraps up drag and drop workflow editing. There's lots of cool things you can do, like rearrange these by dragging and dropping. Obviously, cloning steps into other cloning actions into other steps, as well as, and this is new to this version, stepping into a role and seeing what you're able to do for each step. All right, let's go ahead and talk about drag and drop content type creator. So let's go into types and tags. Content type here. Let me delete this. And let's create a new content type. Let's call it product. Let's pretend it's something we can purchase. Actually, let's make it vehicle. And we'll pretend like these are vehicles we're buying here. So some purchasable vehicles. We're going to leave all the rest of this stuff as is for right now. We're just going to create this, start demoing these drag and drop fields. So let's take a text field in here. Let's get the model of our vehicle in here. Model of vehicle, just make this the hint. Model of vehicle. Make it required. User searchable, which automatically makes it indexed, and show and list. And we'll add that in there. Great, now we have a model. Maybe we want a price as well here. So we'll have decimal type. We'll do price, alt value 0.00, and price in US dollars here. Required, user searchable, shown list. We'll add that as well. And oh yeah, another thing we can do here is we can also add a validation regex. So we can make sure that it's numbers only, alphanumeric, that sort of thing. We could have done that for the same thing up here for models. We could have a tag field in here, so maybe we want to tag certain things like let's call this vehicle amenities, and we'll save it. And imagine you want to say it has air conditioning, it has a sunroof, automatic windows, automatic transmission or manual transmission, that sort of thing. Those could be tags on this content type. And let's also have, I don't know, oh yeah, an image. Image sounds like a good idea. Huh? So what should we call this? Just call it image. We'll make it required. And now let's set a divider on here. A tab divider, that is. So then on the next, we're going to call the next tab on this. So everything that appears before this tab divider will appear on the first tab of the content creator. Everything after it will appear on the next tab of this name. So let's call this one vehicle details. Here we'll have a text area, and let's call this vehicle, let's just call it description. We'll require it, and we'll make it user searchable as well. And then let's also have another text area on here called vehicle history. So this might be something like Carfax report or any information about the car and where it's been, that sort of thing. And for fun, let's put another field in here. So see, we have this vehicle details tab right here. If we wanted to change this, like maybe we want to put vehicle amenities into the second tab, we could just drag it down here, put it after the vehicle details tab, and it'll end up in that second tab there. And let's make another tab here. Let's put publishing details. Maybe we'll set some date fields here for when the listing should become live and when it should go away. We'll just make these simple date fields. So publish date. And let's show it in the list too. And let's add another date field for, I would call them an expire date, but what we really mean is the vehicle is no longer available. Let's just keep calling it expire date. And let's show it in the list too, why not? All right, so we've got all these fields. We've set up this content type. Let's also add the publish field in here. Must not have saved it properly here. So let's go and take a look at creating a new piece of this content in this type. So if we go to the content search tab, we already have, it's pre-selected because whatever you were just editing in content types will always be pre-selected here. So let's add a new piece of content here and see what the editor looks like. Cool. So we got a model here. I should probably add a couple more fields like make and year, but let's just call this Ethode. It's some sort of Lamborghini, right? The price is probably way too much. So $3,000,000.99. And image. Let's see here. Let's get something off the demo here. Images. Why not our logo? And then we see we have these other tabs here. So we got vehicle details. So the vehicle is in pristine condition, has tons of horsepower, is generally awesome. Vehicle history, maybe we want to say one owner vehicle purchased in 2004, oil changes twice a year, new timing chain. I don't know if these cars have timing chains or timing belts, but 2012. If we had some tags set up, we could put some in here. So let's do like air conditioning. So we don't have those in here. Let's do airlines. And then let's see if there's anything else in here. No, let's just pretend it's an airline. Let's move on to publishing details. We'll set a publish date in the past, so we want it to be live now, and then we'll set an expired date on the 30th. We only want to fish for leads on this between those two times, and we'll save and publish that. It'll end up in our content list here, and now we have a new vehicle in here. That's how easy it is to make and start using new content types. You can come back in here, edit things. Maybe we didn't like having these vehicle details on a separate page. We could click just to delete that tab, go back into the content search, open up the Ethode again, and now we have all of those fields right on that first page, and then publishing details comes later on the second page. Okay, let's jump into enhanced containers next. In dotCMS 5.0, we have a couple of new things for containers. So let's take a look at one. Let's look at this large column one. You can see we have the fields we're all used to: title, description, max content lengths, pre-loop, post-loop, everything in between, the notes field here. But in the everything in between area where we're actually rendering the container itself and the content lengths inside the container, we now have this add variable button. You can click on this and say you had some complexly named variable like this show on menu checkboxes, labels, and values, example gradia. You don't know exactly what or don't remember exactly what the velocity variable name is. We can just click add here and we'll get the variable included right here. So if you were, say, working on, you had it one and you wanted to insert the title here, all you'd have to do is go in, click title, and then boom, we've got the title included inside of our H1 tag. And these are, of course, specific to each of these content types. So the blog content type will have different fields than, say, the media content type. Scroll down here, which has a whole different set of variables. So that's just a quick way. Then you don't have to remember them. You can just go through, pick them off by their friendly name, and include them into your content. Nice and easy. Another nice new feature with containers and these new add variable buttons are we have a couple of shortcuts in here. Not shortcuts, but auto-generated fields. So we have a publish date here, and then underneath we also have this date short string, date long string, date database format. So these will actually quickly format these fields for you because they are indexed in these ways as well. So all you have to do is add one of those, and you'll see here we'll have publish date, that says publish date, and then you'll see it adds a suffix of long format or database format, in this case DB format. Oh, I added it right in the middle of the string there. Here, let me do that again. Database format, so you can see it's adding these built-in formatted strings. I guess I already added that one too. Should have done these in order, huh? All right, short format. So we've got all of them here, all the possibilities, all based on this original velocity variable here. So you'll notice, so this occurs on all the different content types as long as it's a date or date time field. Here we can see we have the date long string here as well for this publish date on this content type as well. Okay, so another thing we can do with containers is we can put multiple of them on a page now. Before, you couldn't insert more than one of them in a template. You still can't do that in a template actually, but thanks to page layouts you can. So let's get into the blog here. Notice we have our 8-width column here and our 4-width column here. Let's get into the page layout editor. We can see that here. Now we can also add containers beneath this. Let me just add another large 1-column container here. Save this, go back into content. And down below we'll see we have another container here, and it's exactly the same as this container up here. So that's some flexibility added into 5.0. We could add as many of these as we want. We could go kind of crazy here. We could also add another container with that, oops, just randomly clicked there, with that same container inside there, another column with that same container inside there. Let's save this, go back into the content view, and take a look. All right, now we see we have those 8 width ones, and then we have a full 12 width one here. And here we could add, actually let's add another blog guy in here. So the VTL include blog listing, yes. Add that in there, and then we'll scroll to the bottom, and then we'll see, there we go, we got another blog listing in the same type of container as this one is in. It's just a different width. Save and publish that, view the live version, and it all just works. So that's some more flexibility garnered with 5.0 and enhanced containers. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the new reporting module. So in the reporting module, if you go just to the new dashboard, not the legacy dashboard, you'll be greeted with this demonstration reporting module. So what this is actually pulls directly from Google Analytics reports. So this is a custom created report layout that dotCMS includes. This is just a sample one, but you're actually able to copy this, apply it to your data, and do whatever you wish with it against your own analytics account data. So in the case of this, I think it's pointing at dotCMS's homepage. That would be my guess. But we can see we have different types of data here. We have sessions by day. We have sessions by day in a line graph, and it's going along horizontally with time here. We have sessions based on source. We have browser, device, a map down here showing where we're getting all our sessions from. All sorts of ways to get at a quick glance nice data. So let's see how we would include our own version. I've actually created one already, so I'm just going to copy this link. All you do is you go into the sites, click on your current site, scroll down here until you see the embedded dashboard URL, and copy in this URL. This is what your URL should look like anyway. Save and activate, and then let's get back to the dashboard. So now we don't get greeted with that, with a little message that says that this is demo data. This is actual live data. This is from Ethode.com's homepage. We can see our sessions going by day here, all the same data as before. We actually get visitor age here because apparently our analytics account is reporting that. We can see, and I also changed something here. See how we have social traffic? This one's nice and large now. I've actually gone in and modified this myself. So let's see how we do that. What you would do is you would scroll down to the bottom here. You'll be greeted with this open report in Google Data Studio. And then from here, you're off into Google Apps. But if you are the owner of this data view, you can go in and actually edit everything that you see here. So we could say, okay, I don't really want this time against sessions. Let's do it against session length. There, now we'll have a graph against session duration. It's already saved, and let's refresh this page now. All right, so page refreshed, and now we're looking at session duration. So this is a fully customizable Google report just sitting right here inside dotCMS in your dashboard. So you can just show up here at your reporting dashboard and quickly at a glance see what's happening on your site. You can also change these date ranges to be more focused. So we could say we just want just this last week from Monday through Friday. Let's apply that there. And all the data on the entire page will now reflect that. So we had 111 hits from Google. Our devices were mostly desktop. Pretty much everybody's from the United States, but also some people from around the world here, even some people in Brazil, it looks like. But it narrows all of our data just on that date range, which is really nice. So at a quick glance, you can see what's going on thanks to the new reporting dashboard. That wraps up this dotCMS 5.0 new feature overview. We hope you enjoyed these new features. I know we at Ethode will be leaning heavily on the new page layout editor and reporting dashboard for many of our clients. They're going to be just so useful to give people an idea what's going on at a glance, as well as empower content creators to change the pages as they see fit without having to ask the developers to go change stuff. I'd like to thank my coworker Tom Kisha for exploring and testing dotCMS 5.0 and finding things for me to talk about. I'd also like to thank Stefan Schinkel for updating and preparing all the in-depth video guides for dotCMS 5.0, which are for content creators, reviewers, editors, all the way to web developers and back-end Java developers. These helped greatly. It helped greatly with us here at Ethode, help us wrap our heads around all these new features and get ready to develop on 5.0. With all that said, we'll open up this webinar to Q&A. Tom Kisha and I will be fielding your questions, and thanks again for tuning in. All right, so we're going to open it up for questions now. I can see we have one here. If time permits, could you demonstrate how we might handle a responsive design with the drag and drop layouts? For example, 3 columns might look great on desktop, but on mobile, we might want to swap to single column, or are a manually created templates still an option, presumably the best way to approach responsive layouts? So for responsive layouts, so you saw how we had these, we had those columns set to like call-md-8. So that'll look great on everything above 768 pixels perhaps, but then below that, Bootstrap by default will make those full width columns. So you could also change the main template there so that it would always write in a call-xs-12. So at least on super small screens, it would always be full width, or you can make it default to call-xs-8 or something like that. But by default, once in Bootstrap anyway, once you get below the breakpoint for a specific row, it'll default to full width if it's in a row. So that would accomplish that, like you said. I think that's what you said, right? Yeah, swap to a single column. So what it'll do is if you're in a row and you have an object inside another div inside that row, that'll become full width and everything will just stack vertically, just like you're saying, in a single column. Thanks for the question, Mark. I wish this window was a little bit larger. Sorry, guys. What does the upgrade process look like for a client using a previous version of dotCMS? So if you're using 4.x, the upgrade process is mostly painless. The biggest changes are with Elasticsearch. So the Elasticsearch upgrade goes from 1.7.3 to 6.1.3. And if you look at the dotCMS upgrade guide, this is the meatiest portion of that guide. What you can no longer use are the _all keywords. So if you have some content type ._all and you're searching for a string or some string plus a wildcard on their side there, you won't be able to use that anymore. You'll have to change _all to catch all, the string all lowercase catch all. That was a change made. And there's another thing that changed with Elasticsearch with regards to how types are stored. So now, instead of everything being stored as strings, essentially, or keyword types, they're going to be stored as, some things are going to be stored as integers, and some things are going to be stored as dates, specifically integer fields, text fields that you have set to integer, I believe, and as well as date and date time fields. So date and date time fields will get indexed as native date or date time fields. And therefore, if you use the old wildcard method, say of using a bracket and then like 2015 asterisk to do all of 2015, that won't work anymore. If you're going to do a range like that, you'll need to do 2015-0101 to start from the first day. And then on the second part of your range, say it was 2016 or 2015 or 2016 12/31 to go all the way through to the end of the year. So the wildcard, it won't work that way anymore if you use the original fields. So if you had a date field called date and a content type called content type,
content type.date, that field would have to use the new native format, but dotCMS will also be indexing raw fields. I have them here. Give me just one moment to look it up again. It's called, all right. So if you had a date field called date, you'll also have an index field called date_dotraw. And .raw fields will be stored as keyword fields. So you can either use your old wildcard syntax and use the new field _.raw, which will be indexed as a string and will work the old way, or you can update your date wildcards to not be wildcards anymore to actually look for native types. So if you want to look for all of 2015, you do 2015 0101 to 2015 1231 in a date format, and that would look through the entire year instead of just 2015 star. Or you can use the _.raw and use the old asterisk format. But that's the biggest things that occurred in the update, and that's what we're looking to do in our upcoming upgrades that we have. Why can't I make this bigger? I can't make this bigger. All right. Thanks for the question, Barton. Or yeah, Barton. And Ben asks, would you think it's better to have one container per content type or one container for a set width of column for all content types? It really comes down to personal preference and the preference of your web developers. I'm pretty opinionated on that, I guess, and I like having a single column for my containers, and then the containers and the contentlets themselves actually control whether or not there's going to be multiple items on the row. But I know lots of other people don't necessarily like to do things that way. I know that Tom likes to operate in different ways because he's made quite a few templates that allow you to configure columns with separate contentlets and separate containers. So I personally think it's easier to reason about those sorts of things, and it's easier to design templates around that. But that definitely doesn't lend itself to lots of flexibility and having, dynamic sidebar type stuff going on. Tom, what do you think about this question? It says, would you think it's better to have one container per content type or one container for a set width of column for all content types?
Well, it really depends on what the content is. If the content itself needs to be flexible, then having a container that's agnostic to the column width is probably not a way to go. But it really depends on the situation of what type of content you want to put in there. So if you have something along the lines of let's say like the blog posts, generally you're going to want that to be on the bigger side, and you can design a container to go around that. But if you want to have that in multiple places where it's going to be different widths, and you design around that, then having a width agnostic container would probably be the way to go. So it really depends on your situation. So I'm pretty flexible. I could go either way. I prefer to have containers that don't have predefined widths. That's my opinion on the matter.
Thanks, Tom. Hopefully that gives you some insight there, Ben. Excellent. I have some other questions that have been asked before. See, what should be a key driver to migrate to dotCMS 5 series? And one thing we're thinking is that the CMS end user experience and edit mode. So nowadays they're able to just click into the content and edit it. They're able to go into the page layout and adjust things if their web developers have set things up, or if they're using something similar to the dotCMS demo. They're able to do a whole lot with the page and arranging content before they have to go and ask their web developers to change the look and feel of the page for them. So it offloads a lot of the IT to focus on innovation for other parts of their applications and sites, which obviously has a direct impact on total cost of ownership and the return on investment for the people who are involved with content editing. They're not going to be sitting idle waiting for web developers to just give them a new column. I've got another question here. Would you recommend on-premise or dotCMS cloud? It really depends on if you want to be responsible for the underlying infrastructure, or if you have the internal resources and capacity to do so. It takes a lot to manage an entire web ecosystem, and dotCMS cloud takes that burden away from you, or away for you. In addition, upgrades to newer releases are handled by dotCMS, and then you don't have to go through juggling that. And on-premises deployment, private cloud, anything that's not dotCMS cloud, that ends up being your own responsibility. So you don't get to rely on dotCMS for that. Got another one here. How about managed services or building our private cloud? So dotCMS 5 is built for cloud deployment, both on dotCMS's cloud as well as private clouds. dotCMS can be fully containerized, which is nice. So therefore, it's kind of cloud stack agnostic. And those are really the ingredients for getting something put up on a private cloud. dotCMS is very easy to deploy on different operating systems. I personally have deployed it on Ubuntu, on CentOS, on Amazon's EC2 instances using either Amazon Linux or CentOS or CentOS, however you want to pronounce that one. So it's pretty well built for easily and quickly putting it up on the cloud. Not to mention it's able to be containerized very easily. Well, out of questions, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd like to thank Tom Kisha for tuning in with me as well to help answer these questions and also to help me with this webinar in general. This was our first shot at giving a webinar for dotCMS here. We hope you guys found it informative. We hope the information was at least mostly accurate and you guys enjoyed what we were focusing on. This new version is pretty interesting. We're really liking how the back end is moving along with dotCMS, and we're pretty happy to pass that along to our clients and make their lives easier as well.